Last week, in our inaugural edition of the weekly feature, All in the Movies, our discussion lingered on the new Mad Max movie, Mad Max Fury Road. I was so taken by that conversation, I did something the following night I almost never do, considering I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. I went to the movies with my wife, and we saw Mad Max in a movie theater in 3D. But before the movie started, I saw this trailer, which I have so many feelings about.
This family's in a rut. We gotta shake things up. We're driving to Wally World.
What? This is some right here.
My trip to Wally World when I was a kid was the best time I ever had.
So you want to redo your vacation from 30 years ago?
This will be completely different.
I've never even heard of the original Vacation.
Doesn't matter. The new Vacation will stand on its own.
My feelings are A, I will 100% see this movie. B, my wife said that I will almost certainly be seeing this movie without her. C, I laughed all the way through the entire trailer. And D, why is it that Hollywood has to remake or reboot everything, including what is perhaps the greatest movie in movie history, Point Break? I mean, why stop there? Why not remake Citizen Kane? In tonight's All in the Movies, we'll tackle why everything that's old in Hollywood is new again, and that's next. All right, joining me now in the special All-In Movie Theater, Dana Stevens, movie critic at Slate and co-host of the Slate Culture Gabfest, Erin Ryan, managing editor at Jezebel, and Jason Bailey, our good friend, film editor at Flavor Wire. Okay, so we talked about Mad Max last week. Jason was here, the other two of you were not, but I need to talk about it again because I actually saw the movie. Yeah. It's a fun thing to talk about movies that you've seen rather than have just read like a Dana Stevens review of, which is usually what I'm working off of. I loved it. But it really resonated with me, this thing that was written down in IO9 about what a miracle it is that it got made. Mm-hmm. Miller was given a massive $150 million budget. More insanely, he seemingly also had complete creative control. Shouldn't have been possible. Hollywood executives are paid to prevent this sort of potential disaster from ever happening. Yet somehow, one 70-year-old man who'd been stuck directing children's movies for 2 decades created a legitimate masterpiece of the action genre. And do you feel the same way about it?
Well, I'm not as passionate about it as you are. I completely agree that it's a miracle that it got made.
That part of it, yeah.
And the role that it plays, I mean, I think a huge part of the pleasure for me in seeing it was just that it was George Miller at 70 returning to a 36-year-old franchise and still having energy, originality, inventiveness. Yeah, that it felt nothing like the sort of tired reboot or I'm going back to my past glories. It was a true new step along the insane path that he was already on.
Well, and what I think is really interesting about a lot of the raves that I've read is how much of it is just people praising him for getting basic action directing things right, like composition and geography
and being able to follow a fight
tempo.
Scene.
Yes, and it's like it speaks to the fact that it's been that long since he made a live action movie, that he hasn't been working during the Bayization, if you will, of action cinema, to where this is a guy who actually knows what he's doing and is bringing all of that to a genre that's kind of forgotten how to do it that clearly.
Well, I watched it and I really liked the first, like the original 3 Mad Max, even beyond Thunderdome, even though but I liked those
Tina
movies.
Turner in football pads is like the greatest thing in the world.
Amazing.
Yeah,
but I liked those movies despite like the violent misogyny inherent in them. And after I saw this Mad Max, I remember leaving the theater and being like, I feel so energized. And it was because I wasn't spending energy ignoring misogyny in like an action movie. And it was like this amazing...
You didn't have to like wall off part of yourself.
Exactly. I didn't have to like just, okay, ignore that. That was gratuitous. It was all just enjoyable for me.
Okay, so the other thing about the Mad Max movie, like when I first saw it, I was like, really? They're making another Mad Max? And Jason and I were having an email exchange earlier today about like the category of... The category of films that come out in the summer, which all have some relationship in some way to some previous thing, right? But like, there's a spectrum, right, Dana? So there's a straight up remake, like we're gonna make this movie again.
Right. Well, then there's also just the continuation of the franchise, right? I mean, maybe that's like bedrock level.
Right. Yeah. So like the comic book movies, for instance.
Right. Just the one that's a sequel to a sequel to a sequel. Right.
So there's sequels to sequels to sequels. There's remakes, and then there's kind of like reboots, I guess you could call them, right? Like. Yeah. I guess my feeling is Mad Max to me showed that like there's a lot more creativity possible in
all those phrases are such downers, right? Both reboot and remake, to me, that just is such a deflating notion that that's what a movie's going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Mad Max movie does not really feel like it fits into any of those categories, I would say.
And based on the trailer, I gotta say, like, I sat there for that Vacation trailer, and like, I love the original Vacation movie. I think like every person of my age and gender, and although maybe it has more universal appeal than I think it does, but I saw that and I was completely psyched to see it, and it seems like it basically is just going to be like a dumb, like an equally dumb version of the first one.
Right. Well, it's weird because you'll have things that like are technically one of those sort of sub genres, but feel like another. Like this is technically a sequel. You know, Ed Helms is playing Rusty grown up.
Which, by the way, what was the call between Anthony Michael Hall's agent and Anthony Michael Hall when that casting decision happened? It's like they've got someone else to play you when you're grown up. You're right here, Anthony.
Yeah, but in all fairness, it's the third time that's happened, so it's a conversation they've had before.
But I have to just leap in and say that Anthony Michael Hall, the adult Anthony Michael Hall, is in another movie that's premiering this weekend called Results, which I thought was really good.
Funny in it.
He's got a small comedic role. He's really good, and he could not be more unrecognizable from Rusty Griswold.
Totally.
There you go.
But so in that regard, you know, it's Chevy Chase is back in the same role, Beverly D'Angelo, so it's technically a sequel, but it feels like a reboot because it's the same story, or a remake, and it's got the same title again. So. In a lot of ways, what I think we're seeing in a lot of these films that are rebooting or sort of ignoring sequels or things like that is just the general idea of filmmakers trying to assure a core audience, we're going to go back to our roots. We're going to forget about those George Lucas prequels. Forget about the second and third Jurassic Park. Let's put those. No, we're going to get back to our roots, and we'll make a movie like one that you love.
It's like trying to wipe the slate clean.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a cover song, basically. It's not anything new. It's like I know this song, but it's different. There's
but the more precious the original is, the more difficult that reboot is. Like Superman, nobody has gotten it. Not one.
Well, this brings us to the weirdest remake ever, which is Point Break. Which I don't know the feeling here about Point. Like, do you like Point Break? Or you?
Well, no.
I love Point Break. Okay, so I love Point Break.
I venerate Point Break.
Venerate Point Break.
Don't care about Vacation very much, but venerate Point Break.
I almost actually got one of the president's masks to do a tease, but I thought that would be way too creepy. But like, why would you remake that movie? It's not like that. I can't even understand the logic of. Like, the original's there. You love it or you don't love it, or you feel somewhere in between.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have some huge franchise pull. It's not like
well, I mean, and like the way that they're redoing it is almost regressive. Like Catherine Bigelow directed the first one, and this time they just have this like random Scandinavian dude who's only got one credit, and they made up a fake like bombshell lady role, and there's another hot lady, and then it's a sausage fest the rest of the way.
And honestly, from what I don't usually watch trailers, but I watched it to try to gather some sense of Point Break remake. Why? And it almost seems like they just used it because it's a cool title. I mean, it seems very vaguely related. There's some extreme athletes that do some cop activities. That's about the only
so it's not actually the same movie.
You're getting to the essence of the entire sort of reboot culture, which is that all Point Break is a brand. It is a recognizable thing. It's a thing from the 90s that people remember, and that is what it takes to get a green light in Hollywood right now. It's like the entire studio slates look like a BuzzFeed listicle. It's just, this was a thing. You remember this thing? You'll go see this thing then.
Yes.
Where's my Married with Children reboot?
I guarantee you there will be a Married with Children. Did they ever make a movie of that?
I don't know.
There was never.
You're giving people ideas, Chris Hayes. I need you to shut it down.
That's a very terrible idea. They should not do that.
They should definitely not do that.
Totally not.
All right. Well, Christina Applegate will be in your beloved Vacation, so there's a little taste.
That's right.
There we go.
She's going to be great.
Full circle.
Dana Stevens, Erin Ryan, and Jason Bailey. Thank you for joining us here at the movies. Have some popcorn. That is all on for this evening.